Okay, now I'm recording, and it looks great. The sound signature is strong.
All right. My sound signature is strong.
My sound signature is a little bit stronger than yours, Jake.
My sound signature just got rated as perfect.
You know, when I talk, the sound signature makes these beautiful mountains and valleys. I bet yours don't. I bet yours.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. And all of us have worked for all the major publishers. We've together published somewhere around 50 or 75 books or 100 books or 200 books or 500 books, however many.
A lot.
It changes every week.
Every book.
And we've all taught illustration at the university.
Every week we come at you guys with a different topic in illustration that is fascinating, new, and exciting. And each week we're going to argue and beat each other up, especially this week.
All right. Today, I want to talk about what is keeping you from finishing your project, from starting and finishing that project that you've always wanted to do. Could be a children's book, could be a graphic novel, could be an animated short. I don't know, could be a board game. What are other projects we artists tend to find ourselves doing? I think I covered all the bases there, didn't I?
Sculpture.
The book was the first thing I said.
Book was the first one. Yeah, but...
Have you guys ever done much sculpture?
No.
Not much.
Man, it's a lot of fun.
I do want to do... I would like to make a bronze one time. I think that would be cool. To like sculpt a thing, cast it in bronze, have it there, pass it down through my children, and this has been in our family for 5 generations.
What would you sculpt that would be worthy of bronze, Jake?
It would probably be like
one of those crappy skull chasers or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. No, but actually, I want to tell you about my friend Tim Boyle, and you guys have probably never heard of him because he is not a professional illustrator. He's an architect. Tim and I grew up together. I met him in kindergarten. We've kept in touch all these years, best buds in high school. We got married a week apart from each other, and we had our first kid a week apart from each other.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I feel like our lives have always been somewhat connected. And all growing up, we were artists. We would draw, and he would draw something cool, and then I'd be like, oh, I got to draw something as cool as that. And so I would draw something cool, and I don't know if he was feeling the same way, but he'd always come back and be like, well, look at what I drew, And so so there's always this like healthy artistic camaraderie between us. But what's cool about Tim, so he went on to, we were both sort of artists in high school, and he decided he wanted to go into architecture and follow that path. And I decided I would go into animation and follow that path. And then I found myself doing comics and illustration as well. So that's our background. But this last month, he started posting, he posted a page that looked like a spread from a children's book. And it wasn't even that. He posted a cover to a children's book, and it was called Great White Zeke. And it had a picture of a little baby in the ocean next to a great white shark. And I was like, what's this? This is cool. And then every day he posted a spread from this children's book. It was, and I realized, oh, he's basically doing a children's book right in front of us, more or less. And the story is essentially, Great White Zeke is sort of like a Tarzan tale, a baby raised by apes, but Zeke is a baby raised by great white sharks. And every day he posted it. I thought, where's this going? Is he actually going to tell a story? And it ended up being a good story. tells a story. It's weird, it's quirky, it's fun. You would never think to put a baby, the most harmless creature with probably the most dangerous looking creature on the planet Earth, but to put them together. And he finished the book, and it was lovely. It was nice. He posted all the spreads, and then he called me up. He's all, okay, how do I get this thing published?
Oh no.
And I was like, all right, here's your options. And so the advice I gave him, I said, this thing right here, you're like, a major publisher isn't going to be interested in it, probably. A smaller, more independent kind of publisher, definitely a publisher who does animal books or something like that, would probably be interested in it. Your other option is to self-publish it, and you could kickstart it to get the funding to self-publish it. You could fund it yourself. And so we had a few conversations like that. He actually came over for lunch one day, and we talked about it, and he sort of took that all into consideration. And I told him everything that I know about Kickstarter. Basically, like, I've done 5 Kickstarters, and I just said, here's what works, here's what doesn't work, and it was like 2 days later, he launched the Kickstarter. And it funded within 2 days. And now he's got enough money to get a book order made. And he said, now, what do I do now that I don't have anything to post about this? Because I already posted all the pages online. Like, how do I promote this Kickstarter for the next 30 days? And I said, I don't know, maybe start working on book number 2. So he started book number 2, and he's posting a page a day or a spread every other day or something like that of the follow-up story to this. And then he'll have a second book that he can then publish if he wants. But if not, it's still, a reason for him to, like, here's a new spread, by the way, if you like this kind of stuff, here's my book. And it was so impressive to me that he had zero inhibition. He had an idea, he executed it, he launched a Kickstarter for it, and at the end of 2 months, he's going to have drawn 2 children's books, have funding to publish the first children's book, and in a few more months after that, have actual physical copies in his hand that he could sell on his website, that he could, I told him he should contact every gift shop at every zoo, aquarium, museum, and just say, hey, I've got a book about a baby and a shark. And I think those places would, order 5 of them or something like that. So it got me thinking, like, how come I myself do this, and I know so many other people do this, who are like, yeah, this is a children's book I started. It's really not going anywhere. I'm like 2-3 spreads into it. I'll get back to it later. I've got other things to do. Or you have an idea, you've written a story, but you just haven't had time to completely illustrate it. And I've been trying to think, what made this guy go from 0 to like 60 and to get this thing finished. And what keeps us from not doing that.
Okay, is this live right now? His Kickstarter?
His Kickstarter is live right now. If you just do a search, Great White Zeke, it'll take you to his Kickstarter. So you guys should check it out.
Zeke is spelled
Zeke.
There it is.
Yeah. So you can see he illustrated all on Procreate. He downloaded some specific watercolor brushes, and he chose watercolor because you can get a lot of bang for your buck slapping down watercolors. He says he's used a lot of photo reference to get the shark shapes right. And he banged it out. He knocked it out. I went through some of his Procreate files just to see how he did it. And anyways, really cool that he did this. Have you guys? How often do you see this happen? You have
Where
a friend
someone-
or someone who's like, yeah, I want to do a children's book, and then they actually do it.
Yeah,
Zero.
Probably for everyone that does it, there's 99 people that don't.
Yeah. So what I want to dig into today is what is it that causes the 99 to not do it, and what is it that causes the Tim Boyles of the world to knock this out and to actually fulfill their dream. I don't know if it's his dream, but basically this inkling of an idea that, I need to do a children's book. I've got a good idea. Let's knock it out. I've got a few ideas here, but I'm curious. You guys suss this over in your heads, think it through, and I'd like to hear from your perspective. But one thing that I think stops people from actually finishing a project like this is they can't commit to a decision. You have all these options in front of you. You have all these things to do, and there isn't like a full committal. You don't want to commit to one thing, because saying yes to one thing means you're saying no to all these other things.
Do you mean saying yes to working on the project means you're saying no to working on other things?
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah. Do you think that would be I don't know, in your own experience, has that been a problem for you in not finishing things?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down some notes for this podcast, and I think that there are a lot of factors that are going on subconsciously in our brains that we often hear. You have the voice, and I think in the Art of War it was called the resistance. Is that right? Mm-hmm. You have the internal voice.
It's the war of art.
The war of art. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes hopefully you're telling your internal voice is telling you positive things about yourself, and that's where doing positive affirmations and kind of sometimes we have to practice being positive. We have to practice telling ourselves that we're good, rather than constantly bombarding ourselves with we're going to fail. But most people are dealing with that. They've had a past failure or two or three, right, and they've taught themselves, I'm not like other people who succeed. I'm one of the many who don't do great things. And my belief is that every one of us can do great things, can produce great projects, but that we've told ourselves, or we constantly hear that little voice saying, like you were saying, is there something else in the way? Yeah, I could be watching TV, I could be playing a game and starting this project. I'll do it tomorrow. And putting it off because there are other things that we need to do. Well, when I get done with all of this stuff, then I'll work on my dream. And because you gave us this topic days ago, I really thought about it for myself, and I have been wanting to do a book, a business book that is teaches illustrators how to make money with their art for about a decade. And I kept saying, well, I'll finally be ready sometime. And you knew I've been talking to you about it for years.
Right. Yeah.
It should be, based on when this podcast is released, it should be going right towards the end of the Kickstarter right now. But I was constantly, it was such a big project that I remember my thoughts were, I would just give myself a pass and give myself a break and just say, at some point in my life, this will happen, but it's too big for me to start right now. And it took the death of my wife to be able to, I needed a project that would bring me back. I couldn't work. I couldn't draw. I didn't draw for I didn't draw for 3 or 4 months. I just,
Right.
every time I would try, nothing would come out. I just didn't have it.
Right. Like, what's the
And
point?
yeah, but I could write. And
Mhm.
so I said to myself, I'm just going to write 3 pages of this book a day. And it doesn't matter if I publish it right away. I'm just going to start. And this is going to be and it was consciously, it was the project that was going to get me back doing something productive,
Yeah.
you know? So I don't know, based on personal experience, I needed a tragedy to get me to wake up and get this thing going. I don't really know what the answer is if you're just bumping along in your life and you've got this project that you've always wanted to do, because, you know, not everybody, you can't.
I think there's a roadblock. I agree with what you're saying, Will, but I think there's another roadblock too, and also to what Jake's saying with basically opportunity costs. Like, oh, if I do this, then I can't do this other thing. I think the problem that people run into is that there's so much motivation when you're thinking about a project. I'm going to do a children's book. Oh, I'm so excited about it. And at a certain point, if you haven't done a bunch of projects before, you'll notice there's a point where it turns and it's not fun anymore.
Mhm.
It's like now you actually have to do something, and all of a sudden it becomes it's a different thing. It's all of a sudden it's work. It's confusing. It's it all that excitement sort of goes away, and now you got to start plowing away. Like, how much do you really believe in it, and do you believe in it enough to sustain that? But I think when people get that first sense of like discomfort when they actually try to start moving forward, it's so easy to just say, you know what, I'm interested in this other thing. Oh, I'm so excited about it. And then that will turn into the same thing. It's always work. I mean, every time I led a concept design team when we're working on a project, the first 2 weeks are the most fun, and then everybody starts to lose in their mojo because it's work. You actually have to do something, and you're committed to it. So I don't know. Just knowing that's there helps me get through that stage because I know it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's so funny because it can be a small project, and you still hit that moment where it transfers from an idea into something real, and it's just uncomfortable trying to do it. But I also think the reason that Will was able to plow through and finish that project that you're talking about is that you actually gave yourself a solid thing to work on, so and then you gave yourself bite-sized chunks to achieve it. So those two things combined is, I think, the ingredients to doing something. Is like, I'm doing this project and here's how much I'm going to do today or this week or something like that. That combination is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
I like that. I've been actually taking some notes here of some of the things that you guys are saying. So how do we, remove these roadblocks? One of them being pushing through, I think it's called the dip, right? So there's like an excitement level at the beginning. There's an excitement level when you finish, but there's very low excitement through the middle as you realize how much work it is. And I think the point there is when you envision it, it's perfect in your head. At least it's ethereal. Like, there's something, you have an idea of what this thing could be. And as you start working on it, you realize, oh my gosh, there's no way this thing is going to match what my vision is, because I don't have the ability. I don't have, the resources. But I think the way to get through that is to still keep that vision in your head and think, okay, this thing just needs to exist in some form or another as a finished product. And it won't be perfect, but it will be something that I've finished. It always comes back to that finished, not perfect, right? I think the other thing too, I like what Will said is sort of this imposter syndrome thing where you tell yourself, well, I have no business writing a children's book, or I have no business writing a book on business principles. That should be left to people who are, twice as successful or 10 times as successful as me. What should I do? But the truth of it is everybody has something to offer. Everybody has something unique to bring to the table. And so you shouldn't be the one that cancels the project. Let someone else pass that on to someone else. Make a thing, make an offering, and let people decide whether they want it or not. That's not your job. Your job is to make it.
Yeah. Another thing to go along with that, what you're saying there is, you're not going to be the same person you are today in 5 years. You're going to be a different person in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. You may not have the project, a grandiose or an amazing project in you at this point, right now. But you do have unique things right now, and they might be smaller things.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that people get to the point where they make amazing projects is look at the history of projects that they've done prior to it. And it's like each time you pave the road a little further. And so when Jake Parker decides to launch a Kickstarter now, based on all the projects you've done, even before you were an illustrator, as a child, you made children's books, you made comics. Each one of those puts a little pavement down, and then the road grader and the paver goes a little further each time you do a project, to where you're kind of in the beginning of a new project now. You're kind of just coasting down this nice paved road, and then you get to where the road grader is, and you just have to push it a little further.
Right.
But some people try to do that big project where they haven't paved any road, and that's really hard, because when that project inevitably fails, now they've paved the road with thorns in the opposite direction. So now they have to overcome that first in order to get the good pavement going again, and that's tough. But it can be done.
It's amazing how much I used to see that when I was teaching in school. In the animation department, we would, like I said, we'd start on some kind of concept design or whatever, and I'd ask people what they want to do, try to put them in the appropriate job roles, and it would never fail. There'd probably be like 3 to 5 kids out of a 20-person class, which is a pretty good percentage, come up and say, I don't want to work for a company. I want to own my own video game company, or I want to own my own movie studio. And I'm like, all right, well, tell me about that path. You know what I mean? They're like, no, right out of school. And I'm like, okay, do you have $100 million, and do you have teams of people under you, and
do you have
got the
management
ability?
Experience? Do you have?
Yeah, I mean, just try to say that, but then they would sometimes treat me like I'm just like this. I'm just putting out the fire to the dream, and I'm like, no, we got to like we got to reroute you, because that's just doesn't happen that often. I mean, maybe for the one unicorn person that somehow weaved their way through it. But I agree with you. I mean, like I love that analogy of the road, because they are like trying to jump over like the Grand Canyon where there's no bridge has been built at all.
Yeah.
I think doing what you can and realizing what your capabilities are and starting small is a great thing. Making something small and beautiful is such a great thing versus trying to do something huge and unwieldy and then it ends up being unfinished.
Right. See, and here's another thing. If so, I would say, Jake, I like using you as an example because you've done so many Kickstarters. But when you get ready to launch a Kickstarter, do you have any doubt that you're going to make money doing it?
No doubt.
No doubt. So it's easier for you, and that's a good thing, because and I'm making a case that you didn't. That's not gifted. That you didn't just win the lottery. You proved that you can bring a project to market over and over and over again and make money with them. So now maybe your doubt is 2% or 5% or something, but 95% or 98% that you're going to make money. And that's easier. Is when you get to that point, it is same with me on the book that my Kickstarter should be live right now with, it's the title of it is what they don't teach in art school. But I know that it's going to fund. There's no question, because of all the things I've done before. So for you, Jake, I would say it's much easier knowing that you're going to make money with your Kickstarter versus the people who haven't proven to themselves that they can make money with a project, come up with a concept, make the thing and have success selling it. And that's really I think what we're talking about today is getting to the point where it's cause and effect. I make a thing and I make money with it, because once you know that you're going to have success with it, then there's no procrastination. It's just, can I fit it into my schedule? Because you're going to you need money to live and to do the things you want to do. So of course you're going to do the project then, right?
I think going back to Tim's Great White Zeke Kickstarter, what was cool what he did was he, number one, loves sharks. So he's picking a project that he already knows a lot about. He knows, he's a shark nerd, right? So he's not going to draw a great white shark in one panel and draw a tiger shark in the other panel. He's making a book sort of for himself, right? The other thing was he posted it on his own social media, but then he targeted certain groups on Facebook who already love sharks, who go shark diving, who research sharks, and he found all these Facebook groups for sharks, and he just started, hey, here's this thing I'm working on, posting it one at a time, and got feedback from them saying how much they loved it, how cool it was. Is this going to be a book? Is this thing going to get you're going to print this thing? And so I think part of it too is a lot of times people kind of like to hold their cards close to their chest, right? They don't want to reveal the thing that they're working on because they're worried people are going to steal it. They're worried that people are going to be critical of it. And they're worried that maybe it's just those two things, either that it's going to be stolen or they can't handle the criticism of it, right? And I think you need to share your stuff. You need to work on it. If it's in a place where you feel confident, like sharing it, not confident, but you feel like you're in a place where you understand the material enough that it's developed enough that you're not just sharing like half-baked ideas, but something somewhat formed. But I think you share it to get that feedback, and you want that feedback, and you want to know if people like it or not. And I think if it's something you're passionate about, and passion is primarily the driving force, then yes, it doesn't matter what people think, but you also know going into it, this is going to be a hard road, because no one's going to appreciate this thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll find its audience somehow, but I think a lot of us take on these projects partly as their passion project, but there needs to be some sort of financial return on it. Otherwise, your time might be better spent doing something else. There needs to be some reward, I think, outside of just this makes me happy. If it's a product that you're making, right? And so yes, share it, post it. No one is going to steal your idea, I don't think. I haven't ever seen that really happen. I've seen people come up with similar things. I've seen people influenced by other people, but anytime anybody takes something and tries to do their version of what you're doing, it becomes their version of what you're doing. It becomes a new thing. So a lot of amateurs are really worried about that. Like, I don't want my artwork to get stolen. I don't want my idea to get stolen. I'm gonna hide this. I'm gonna keep it safe. But you really risk not hearing what people think and what people say about your idea, because you're so worried about something that's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to get stolen.
Let me ask you a hypothetical question that kind of goes along those lines, a little bit of flipping the coin there. I see a lot of people, myself included, disillusioned sometimes when, say you're working on a project, you come up with your idea and you're gung-ho for it. You start doing your sketches, maybe you post some stuff, whatever. Midway through, you see all of a sudden the book's on the shelf that somebody else did it, and it's like pretty much the same thing you did, or like right along that alley. do you move forward with it? Do you abandon it? I mean, there was one specifically I made a dummy last year, and that book came out almost the same thing, and it was such a specific subject matter, and me and my agent decided to pull it. I mean, so that was like 6 months of my life wasted on doing that thing, and it just took the wind out of the sail, so to speak.
I think it goes back to what is the reason for you pursuing this project. Is it purely just self-gratification? Like, yes, I want to make a children's book. It's just going to be something kept within our family. I'm not going to try and publish it. I'm not going to try and sell it. Then I think you move forward and you make it, because it doesn't matter if it's got competitors in the market. But if your dream and your wish is, I want to make this thing, I want it to be in people's homes, I want it to to influence culture, or I want it to just to be a part of the conversation that's happening out there, then you need to have something that is unique, that hasn't been said before, I think.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
Because my next project's about a shark and a baby.
Great white Pete.
Does the baby eat the shark?
No, but I think you could do great, like T-Rex Tim or something like that. Because Great White Zeke is basically Tarzan. It's a baby raised by wild beasts,
That's
right?
True. That's true.
And I think it goes back to everything being a remix of something else, and we're just always like adding our vision to stuff that's already happened. And I think there's some core ideas that are just so appealing.
What's that rule? There's like 7 or 8 different stories, and then everything's just a take on one on those 7 or 8.
Exactly. And I think too, situations too, like not just stories, but like situations. Everything's like, we're going to go retrieve something, we're going to go win something, we're going to return something. A lot of these stories fall into those. It was all just a
dream.
Oh, you can't do that one. That's the most unsatisfying finish.
It was all just a dream.
Nothing really happened.
I think another roadblocks keeping you from doing something like this is you're too busy. You're just too busy with things, and this isn't a priority. And too busy could mean you have taken on a lot of projects that you have to do. You may have a full-time job, a family, you work out, you also want to have a social life, and you also want to have some sort of vacation from time to time every year. You want to have a weekend getaway, from time to time. You want to have this balanced life. And so if you want to take on this project, you're going to have to cut something out of your life in order to put that project in there. And so that's another like sort of introspective self-evaluation question to ask yourself. It's like, how bad do I want? What am I willing to give up in my life to have this project? And is it worth it? And I know the example with Tim, because we talked about this too. He's like, he's really been asking me, leading up to this, like, about publishing, about printing, getting books printed in China. And do you do how many books do you do? And then what do you do once you have them all? How do you get them distributed? And, is it worth it to kickstart it? All this and that. And he said, and at the end of the day, I'm an architect. I don't want to shift careers and become a publisher. He's like, the amount of time that I'm putting into this, I could be designing another house and, 10xing my, my value for the time that I'm doing. Right. But he loves it. He loves this project, and he's willing to push back on some of these other things to have this thing come out, to have this thing put into the world. And I think too, he's come up with something unique enough and quirky enough that it could find an audience, and it could be something, legitimately valuable to culture, right?
So well, he's already funded, so he's already passed that hurdle.
Right. And at the time of this, you'll probably be able to go to his website and purchase a copy at the time of this this podcast airs.
So you're hitting on something that I think is really important, and that is that I know a lot of people will say to themselves, well, when I retire, that's when I'll do it, because I'll have more time. Or when I finish this job, or when I'm going to have some time over Christmas vacation, I'll do it then, or something. Things seem to always fill in those gaps, though. The times where you have extra time. And most of the successful people that I know that have done things in their lives that you look at and you go, wow, I can't believe you created that business, or that you created that project, or that you did this or that, or you're the person who did this thing that's now famous. Almost all of them did exactly what you're talking about. They did it on top of their day job. They did it on top of their other work. They very rarely does someone ever have extra time in their life where they just magically and then don't fill it with a vacation or finally playing that the whole video game, finishing the game,
putting 50 hours into a video game,
right?
Have you guys ever done that?
I've never I get too bored on that. But I was going to say, we did a dummy challenge when I was in Portland. We had a big group of people that used to meet up for coffee, and we'd do little crits and stuff. And I was kind of bored with that because it would last too long and you just didn't know what you're going to get. So I said, for one of these meetings, monthly meetings, let's do a dummy challenge. We'll all start right now. You can't have anything on paper so far. And when we show up again next month, everyone has a finished dummy. And every single person did. It was amazing. It was probably 20 dummies. And, if you think about it, with a children's book, it's only 32 pages, so 16 spreads. If you do one spread every 2 days, you can have a dummy in 1 month. I mean, it's amazing if you just allocate a page, Incredible.
Well, I've taken some notes here. I kind of want to just review what we've talked about, unless there's anything else you guys wanted to add to this, these roadblocks.
Should we talk about I mean, these are all personal and internal roadblocks. Do you want to talk about external roadblocks, like your family around you all the time? I mean,
Actually,
a lot of people are at home and all that.
It reminds me of one more I want to get into.
And then I have one more.
Okay, cool. So here's what it is. You are surrounded, here's a roadblock. You're surrounded by people who either don't believe in you or aren't facilitating. I don't want to put too much blame on people, but they aren't making your path easy to go down. You're not making it easy for you to go down this path. And it could be that these people just aren't doing cool things themselves, right? So sometimes it's hard to go do a cool, interesting thing if you're surrounded by people who just don't do that kind of stuff, who kind of scratch their head and look at you like, why would you do that? And I think I'm not saying like go fire all your friends and take auditions for new group of friends, but I think you do want to put one or two people in your life who challenge you and who inspire you and who sort of force your hand, like make you want to improve and get out of your comfort zone. And it could be, for me, I had a couple people who I just followed very closely online who were always doing cool stuff. And I thought, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. If they can figure out a way to position their lives so they can get this thing done, there's something I can do to do the same as well. So it might be spending more time with people like that in your personal life, or it might be following less people who aren't inspiring you or who give you anxiety, and following more people who motivate you to be like them or to achieve the kind of things that they're achieving. What were yours? What were yours, Will? What was your other one?
it's important for everyone to realize that we're not all the same, and that some of us, and myself included, I really learn by failing. I would rather fail and go, okay, this is I mean, I'm taking the information from what didn't work, and this comes from like trying to fix something at home and just trying to, rather than calling a repairman or something like that, try to figure out a way to fix it. And a lot of times my fixes will fail, but I take that information and I've learned more from it. And I know that there are other people who really don't work that way. I think it's important to know how you work. But if you do start with small projects, the thing that happens is you'll reveal challenges that you could never have predicted for the bigger projects, right? So you're going to teach yourself. Oh, and what comes to mind is, I get asked every week, multiple times a week, to illustrate some person's children's book. We've talked about this on the podcast a lot. And I got one a few days ago that I still need to respond to. And this woman is, I think she's probably pretty young. She's just had her first kid, she said in the letter. But the way that she tried to hire me to work on her project was, the letter went something like this: I need to make sure that, like, I love your artwork, but I need to make sure that you're gonna pan out for me. Right. And so I need you to answer these questions, and I need you to send me some more sample artworks because I'm considering hiring you. And what she doesn't understand is, obviously from that letter, I mean, there's so many things that we could go into that she doesn't understand about publishing a book. She didn't put anything in there that would make me confident that she knows anything about what she's trying to embark upon. So the list of things that she doesn't know is so vast. And she's trying to do a project that's fairly big. I mean, a children's book is a big project, right?
Right.
Right. And without getting into the details, it's just obvious that she knows zero about the industry. So again, the getting the education through small projects, if it fails, you have to know you're actually closer to success than before the failure. And that's hard for people to understand. That's hard for some people. They want to quit after that. It failed, but you're actually on the path to success. Every entrepreneur, every person that's done lots of projects can also talk about the long list of failures they've had. Those failures are components to the successes that they have after that. And without those, so you have to be able to go in going, okay, what did I learn? And be humble enough to say, after the dust settles, you can't do it in the moment because it hurts too bad.
Right.
After the dust settles, what did I not know? Oh, I didn't know this, and now I've learned this, and now I've learned this. You're just made more pavement towards the next project.
I think that story exaggerates another little thing, that you want to be humble during this whole process and honest with not only yourself, but other people that you're trying to work with. Like that lady that you're talking about, Will, if that was me and I was reaching out to you, I'd be like, man, I'm maybe way off base here. I'm just kind of putting the feelers out. I don't know what I'm doing. And approach it like that. Would you be interested in this at all? And I don't know, just throwing out there, when you don't know something near the beginning, and then having an attitude about it. Yeah. Or all these expectations on other people and yourself as well is just, setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah. Her vibe was definitely one of, if I so choose to grant you the opportunity to work on my self-published book, and you know what? We're all like that about things growing up. So I'm laughing at her, but I'm also laughing at myself, because there have been plenty of times where I was completely out of my league, totally uneducated. And I can look back when I was younger and say, oh, these people were probably laughing at me when I approached them.
Like anytime I've tried to hire someone to work on something in my house or in my yard, or
you just got to be willing to look like an idiot, and things typically go well if you're humble and you're willing to admit. I remember when I was redoing the plumbing in my first house, and I had no idea what I was doing. I actually laid out the plumbing at the store, for my entire house, at the store, because every time I would get home, there'd be some little thing that I forgot or something doesn't fit right. And I just wanted to make sure it all worked together. And I'm laying it out, and the helper guy comes over, and he's like, "Hey, it looks like you got a project going on here." I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm trying to figure this out. And I just want to make sure it works." He sat with me. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna need this part. You're gonna need this part." And like we laid out the whole thing, because I didn't try to fake it. That I admitted that I didn't know anything or what I was doing, and it worked out fine.
Well, and you'd had failures before. You'd gone.
Yeah, every time I go to the store and I come back and it doesn't work, and same, over and over I did that. And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna do the whole thing there.
That's cool. So staying humble, and your failures are even advancements. Because you learned something.
Yeah, and it's hard to look at them that way, especially in the moment. And when my first Kickstarter failed, it's a feeling that it's horrible. You know,
I didn't know you had one that didn't work out.
Yeah, I tried to do. I did, and I made a YouTube video on all the things I did wrong as kind of a way to heal from it. As a way to unpack the whole thing and put it to rest. I actually did a YouTube video on all my failures. I tried to fund an app. Well, people don't like. Why would someone give me $10 for an app that they might think will end up for a couple bucks or free? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So right out of the gate, funding a digital product, I think, is probably almost always a mistake. Because
I feel like I failed you there, Will, because either I wasn't supportive of enough after the Kickstarter, or I didn't give you any advice before the Kickstarter.
Well,
I thought I did.
You failed me for the last time, and so that's why I don't take your advice anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I tried to fund an app, and the other mistake I made was I tried to change my style to a really simplistic style. Mm-hmm. So the people that followed me for the work that they were used to seeing were like, what's this?
Nothing for me here.
Nothing for me here. And then they were also like, and why would I give you $10 for an app that you might put on Free App Friday or something like that? But I had to learn. There were a lot of other lessons too that I went through, and I was like, okay, got it. And then, my next Kickstarter was a big success. So it was hard, and it was hard to launch the next one because in my mind, what if it fails? Then I'll have two failures, so it's tough when you have that failure. But at the same time, I was so much more prepared for the next one.
But Kickstarter is like the optimal solution for someone wanting to do a project, because if it fails, it's no big deal. You're not stuck with a bunch of cash. You're not stuck with a product that you can't sell. You're
out a lot of time and effort, but you have to know, you have to treat that effort as if it's a college class. You just got 3 more credits, right? You just learned, and if you can do that, you're on your way to many successes.
Yeah. I'm working with a board game company that launched a Kickstarter for another one of their board games, and they ended up pulling the plug on it because it wasn't getting the kind of traction that they wanted to or expected it to. And really it was like they have a distributor set up, they have things in position to sell this game to the right people, but they wanted to see if the demographic on Kickstarter would also be interested in it. And turns out they weren't. And so they're like, okay, we're done. We'll just focus our energies on this other thing. And for them, it was just market research, honestly. Like, we could potentially make some extra money and make some extra fans on this thing over here, but if not, we'll just do it the traditional way. So that's another way to look at it. But I don't want to get too far off topic. So I'm going to wrap this up here. Roadblocks keeping you from, just a review, roadblocks keeping you from completing your project. Number one, you cannot commit to a decision. You've got too many opportunities in front of you. You've got shiny object syndrome. You see something really cool over here. Oh, I want to do that. And then you see another cool thing. Oh, let's stop this. Let's go move on to the other thing. So number one, you can't commit to a decision. That's a roadblock. And the first thing is you just have to pick a thing that you're going to work on and have that be your thing. Number two, you're too busy. You just have too much on your plate. And so once you've got your project picked, you're going to have to clear out a portion of your schedule to work on that. And that might be giving up Netflix. It might mean giving up a video game. I've done it before. I love working out. I love running. But there's been times where I'm like, okay, running's going to have to take a back seat for a month while I put those hours that I would put into running into this project. And so you just have to decide what's more valuable, what's more important to you. You are not surrounded by people who support you or inspire you. So the solution there is to search for people who can motivate you, inspire you, whether in your personal life or in your online life, and cut out voices and cut out people in your life who do not believe in you and who do not want to see you succeed or don't care if you succeed or not. The next thing is, and Will talked a lot about this, is to start small. You don't take on that massive project first thing. You start small. Yes, I've done 4 Kickstarters, and I have this confidence that my Kickstarters will turn a profit. But young Jake started by doing paying $1 to Kinko's to photocopy a comic that I drew. I stapled it myself, and I put them in a PayPal shop. There wasn't even a shop. It was just a page on my website. And then if you want this, here's a $5 you could send to my PayPal. And that was the first thing I ever did. And I sold 50 of them, and it was like a very, low barrier for me to like figure out how online, I guess, economics works. So that was the first thing that I did that like 2 or 3 times. I made these little photocopied Kinko's photocopied books, and Kinko's doesn't exist anymore, does it? I guess it's a FedEx copy station now. Anyways, and then the next thing was, well, I want to work with a real publisher. So I found a publisher in Texas, and I asked, how do I send you the print files? And they showed me, here's how you prep your book for print. And I got a book like perfect bound, not stapled, but perfect bound and printed, and ordered way too many copies, never sold through them all. But I sold enough to pay for the printing. So that was good. And that just one thing after another led to where I'm at today, where, it's like dealing with overseas printers and, looking at proofs and just doing the whole thing myself. So start small and work your I guess that roadblock there is you're taking on something way too big. And that's what's stopping you from completing it. The next thing is you're in the middle of this and you just feel like you're faking it. Yeah, that's a huge roadblock. You think that you're not qualified to do this. You think that you, this is best left to someone more talented than you, more attractive than you, more smarter than you. And the reminder there is that I know a lot of people who are really smart who aren't successful, and I know a lot of idiots who are really successful. No, I don't want to say that, but I don't consider myself. I'm definitely not the smartest guy in the room whenever there's a room full of people, but I know I sort of stay in my lane, and I know to do what I know how to do, and I do suffer from imposter syndrome from time to time. But you just have to realize everyone's faking it. Nobody knows everything, and everybody's is treading on new territory from time to time. So just know that you're not alone when you feel like you're faking it. And that leads me to the next one, is to stay humble, which was what Lee brought up. Stay humble and know that if you do fail, if you do fall on your face, it is just it's just a learning experience. And that leads me to the next one. You haven't given yourself a deadline. You haven't given yourself some sort of reason to finish this. And that could be, I want to finish it by a certain date. It could be that there needs to be some sort of thing that makes you realize that if you don't work on it to this specific schedule, it will never happen. So always give yourself some sort of finish date, and it's going to be finished by that date so that you can put it out and move on to the next project. So that would be, and then the last thing, you've got yourself a deadline. The last thing we talked about, I think this is number 9, is to push through the dip. It's going to get hard, and it's going to feel dumb. It's going to look dumb. It's going to not match your vision. But I always keep in mind during that hard time in the middle, I always keep in mind, nope, it needs to exist in the world. And I want to have this be the thing, I want to have this thing actually exist. And I have myself a deadline that I need to meet. So that's what's gonna motivate me through this. Because if I don't work on the stuff I said I would get done today, I'll miss that deadline, and it won't happen. And so often helps too, like if you say, like if it is going to be a Kickstarter that you're going to have fund this thing, where you set like a launch date for that Kickstarter so that it has to be done before that. Or if you're going to have it partially finished but finish it after the Kickstarter launches, on your Kickstarter it says, when are you going to deliver this product to the people? That is a firm deadline because you've publicly stated it. And I think that's it.
Why is it important for you, Jake, to create projects?
Why is it important for me?
And why is it for this podcast? Why is it important why are you encouraging other people to create projects?
You threw me a curveball there, Will.
Yeah, right at the end, he's wrapping up, and all of a sudden he throws this like.
I think for me, having a project and why I always keep doing projects is it makes me feel, I guess, useful. It makes me feel like I'm contributing, I'm making a mark, and I do, and there's this thing inside me that wants to, just wants to know what's possible. You get an idea, and wouldn't it be cool if this happened? And you realize no one else is going to do it if you don't do it, and so you go do it to see that thing exist. And I think that's what keeps driving me there too.
I think that's a common.
Yeah,
I think that's a common thing for artists in general, is to feel like their life had meaning. That you know what I mean? That we left something that can live on without us.
Yeah, because I think even a big factor too is like this last Kickstarter, I was like, well, I could go look for some freelance jobs, or I could do this Kickstarter. One way or another, I need to pay the bills in April or May or whatever coming up here. So I decided to do the Kickstarter because it will pay me up front. I'll make a profit up front. I'll have enough to pay for all the supplies, but then I'll have some money to live on. And then I'll order enough books that I could sell them in my shop and just have another thing to sell and to make money over the time, right? So there's always this, I guess, financial aspect to it for a lot of these projects. But at the end of the day, there's 100 ways to make money. And I could go, just call up people and say, hey, I'm looking for work. Can you guys throw me anything? And this is just a little bit more satisfying to make a thing and to put it out there and to have and to have it not be so wrapped up and connected to, if the kind of jobs I'm thinking of are, I'm going to work on a commercial, or I'm going to work on this established property, things that already exist, or things that essentially are trying to sell something, trying to sell, a lot of times, just could be these big products or whatever. But when I work on a personal project, I'm actually making something that hopefully people haven't seen before, or something new and fresh. So yeah, good question, Will. Appreciate that. All right, Lee, you want to add anything, or are we good?
I wanted to ask you what the meaning of life is when you wrap up.
Real quick, Jake, 5 seconds. Can you just tell us?
No, let's wrap it up.
All right.
I'll tell you what the meaning of life is. You ready?
Okay.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I don't know.
It's to throw in that last question and throw, as Jake is wrapping up.
Just
or the
Will's
last
meaning
comment.
in life is watching people squirm a little bit. That's what gives it meaning.
It really does.
All right. Okay. Thank you for joining us today on the podcast. Thank you for sitting through and listening to this. If you made it to the end, we appreciate it. This podcast, 3-Point Perspective, it's made possible by SVSLearn.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. And your hosts today have been Will Terry, Lee White, and Jake Parker. That's me. Will Terry's artwork can be found online at willterry.com. You can also follow him on Instagram at willterryart. Lee White's artwork can be found at leewhiteillustration.com, and you could follow him on Instagram at leewhiteillo. And my work can be found at mrjakeparker.com, and I'm on Instagram at Jake Parker. Podcast produced by Aaron Painter. Thank you, Aaron, for all that you do. You can find his work at painterdraws.com. And podcast is edited by Alex Sugg. That's Sugg with 2 G's. And you can find his work at alexsugg.com. And our video is edited for the YouTube version of this podcast is edited by Daniel 2. And you can find his stuff at daniel2.co, and 2 is spelled TU. And lastly, podcast is shared by Lisa Fott online and shared on our email list and shared all around. So we appreciate all the work that she does there. All right, everybody, thank you, and hope to see you next time.